Welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to talk about my benzodiazepine journey, how it started, why it started, where I am today, and what am I currently doing to get off of this drug. I think it's really important. A lot of people are going through these horrible poisonous drugs that we don't really know are poisonous because it's provided for us by our doctor. So before I get into it, please make sure to comment and subscribe. Without any further ado. So, I'm going to share my taper experience off of clonazepam. Now, benzodiazepines are a group of drugs. They're mild sedatives or tranquilizers that work on your GABA receptors in your brain. GABA is short for gambiuric acid. I was given this at a young age of 18, and I've been on it for about 15 years. After battling a laundry list of health issues, I finally decided to investigate what was causing my ailments. If you all don't know, I've been chronically ill for the last 15 years, and I've tested almost every single organ in my body on the path to find out what was going on with me. I got no answers whatsoever. So, ironically, the place where I got the answers of why I was so chronically ill came from my dietitian, a person who probably gives you tips on avocado and quinoa recipes rather than some really serious prognosis. But man, did she call it before I even knew it was the case or wanted to believe it. The important thing to realize here, people who are going through benzos, is how benzodiazepines can mimic other health conditions. You think something else is going on when it could be the benzos. Imagine going on 15 years thinking, my heart's fucked up because it keeps skipping a beat. You rush to the doctor only to be told everything's fine, except that nagging feeling in your chest, which is anxiety. Or imagine dealing with persistent thoughts that your brain is fucked because you're hit with severe depression and dark thoughts that seem to come from absolutely nowhere. These are the things that we go through. What about when you're wheezing unexpectedly and you feel your chest getting tight, believing you have asthma? Go to that pulmonologist. You go for a test and everything checks out. You get that common saying, you're fine. Then there are those nights when you wake up in a panic, feeling like you're having a heart attack because your left arm goes numb and you feel pain radiating in the left side of your chest. Or consider thermoregulation issues, suddenly feeling too cold or too hot, or having heat intolerance. You brush it off, but you can't help but thinking that something must be terribly wrong. And guess what? It was the benzos. It was always the benzos. Research shows that benzodiazepines can mimic or replicate serious health issues, leading to millions of people in the US going down a rabbit hole of confusion and fear about our bodies. More studies indicate that these medications can produce palpitations, dizziness, respiratory issues, and a whole array of psychological symptoms that are often mistaken for more serious health conditions. Instead of searching for the root of these bizarre symptoms, we focus our energy on diagnosing ailments that may not even exist, while the very medication we're taking could be the culprit. The truth is, for many of us, the real battle lies not just in our symptoms, but in understanding how these substances have hijacked our bodies. Are you feeling overwhelmed yet? Because I certainly was. There's a real mental turmoil when you're going through the process of understanding that benzos is the root to a lot of your issue. Every single test I did always came back borderline. Have you ever gone through a litany of tests that you've never gotten a direct answer and it's always borderline? Benzodiazepines work by enhancing the effect of neurotransmitters called gamma-aminobutyric acid, or GABA. GABA receptors are crucial for regulating excitability in the brain, and when you take benzodiazepines, they bind to these receptors, leading to increased inhibitory action. This helps you stay calm, reduces anxiety, and induces relaxation. But over time, like most drugs, your body habituates to whatever level you take. Your body reaches a level of homeostasis. What I didn't know was that benzos are among the hardest substances to withdraw from. as challenging as coming off of heroin. And believe it or not, according to the National Institute of Drug Abuse, approximately 30% of people who use benzos will develop a dependency. So why are doctors prescribing this medication? In fact, only recently did it get a black box label of how dangerous it is. For years, I didn't know that the benzodiazepines were causing my palpitations, my anxiety, my thermoregulation issues, GI issues, constipation, upset stomach, bloating, weight gain issues. Not necessarily directly, but indirectly, slowing down my physical activity, all kinds of situations that was caused by these drugs. The more curious thing that I've always asked myself as I'm tapering is, why did none of my specialists tell me? I was not told that this drug, if taken more than 4 weeks, can cause serious habit-forming dependencies that your body goes through. Let me dive in even deeper. So you have cognitive impairment, and this is something that I personally go through. I started at 1.2 milligrams of Klonopin. I've been tapering slowly. I'm at about 0.29 milligrams, and I'll get into my tapering schedule in a little bit here. But your cognitive ability, right? Memory issues and concentration problems, it becomes your new normal. I couldn't remember sometimes what I had for breakfast, let alone what day it was. And I often felt like a confused goldfish swimming in circles. Mood changes, you're an emotional roller coaster. One moment, you're fine. The next moment, you're weeping over a commercial about dog food. Physical symptoms, muscle pain, that feels like you ran a marathon, tremors, fatigue, post-exertional malaise, which is when you do a little bit of activity and then 24 to 48 hours later, you feel a rebound of this. And it can feel like having a flu without having the flu. Gastrointestinal issues, nausea, diarrhea, constipation. I'm hoping you can make it to the bathroom in time. Maybe. And then my favorite part, the sleep disturbance. You ever have that sensation that you're falling asleep only to jolt awake, heart racing, tachycardia, you start sweating? And then ironically, you get afraid of falling asleep because you're going to have anxiety, and then the cycle just perpetuates upon itself. The most egregious and truly testing part of this is dependency and withdrawal symptoms. We often don't think of medication that were given to us and were prescribed by our doctors, using it appropriately as our doctors prescribe. I'm not talking about taking medication and abusing it and mixing with other substances. I'm talking about using the drug as it was prescribed. For me, it was using clonazepam, 0.5 milligrams in the morning, a quarter in the afternoon, a quarter at night. Your body can and will develop dependencies, psychological and physical dependencies to this drug. Make no mistake, you cannot just stop benzos abruptly. You have to taper off of them. So I was talking about earlier how benzos can mimic other issues. Let me get a little bit more about how benzodiazepines can mask and fake other ailments. So as I navigated through the labyrinth of specialists over the last 15 years, I started feeling crappy around 19 years old. I'm about 33 right now. I learned something crucial. Benzodiazepines can mask a host of underlying conditions and even fake ailments. And I touched on this earlier. It's leading to serious misconceptions about your health, my health. Throughout this journey, I found myself convinced I had serious heart problems. I one day wore an event Holter monitor. That's when, if you ever had an EKG, you have the little stickies on your chest and around your rib cage. I wore that for about 30 days to monitor my heart. Nothing. I've had ultrasounds, EKG stress tests. I did something called a CPET. A CPET is when they stick a catheter through your neck and into your right atrial valve. And you do exercise on a bike. You also have an A-line pick in your wrist. And every 2 minutes, they take measurements. So a lot of evaluative measures. Lung issues, I've had pulmonary function tests, seen pulmonologists. The neurologist, I had a tilt test done. That's when you lay on a flat table like this, wearing a mask or hose, and they'll tilt you up in different positions to try to induce or replicate the advent of somebody standing up. When you stand up, blood pressure drops rapidly because the regulation that allows for your body to balance your blood pressure or blood volume is dysregulated when you have dysautonomia. I did what's called, I believe, an EMG. They poke you in different areas with a small pin to test your nerve paths. So here's some of the things that benzodiazepines can mimic. The first one is Lyme disease. Especially if you live in New England, this tick-borne illness can lead to a range of neurological and physical symptoms, including fatigue, headaches, and joint pain. Benzodiazepines can dull these symptoms, diverting attention away from diagnosing the underlying infection while causing symptoms that mimic these conditions. Not only can it mask Lyme disease, but you can have a constellation of symptoms where you're having symptoms of the benzodiazepines that mimic the symptoms of Lyme disease. And the fucked up thing about it is, in my case, I had Lyme disease, I had Ehrlichia, that was my co-infection. Even though I treated the Lyme disease and I was cured of the Lyme disease, I still had symptoms that presented of it because the constellating symptoms of the benzos. Dysautonomia is a dysregulation of the autonomic nervous system. So conditions that affect your autonomic nervous system, which can lead to anything that's being regulated autonomically. So heart rate, dizziness, digestive issues. When you're on benzos, these signs can be minimized or inflamed. And every day and every week, it can be different. One week you feel like you're okay, one week you feel like you're not. And you think that you're going crazy. I thought I was going crazy. GI issues. So issues like IBS and IBD can cause debilitating symptoms. Instead of addressing the root digestive problems, creating an illusion of stability while simultaneously worsening or faking digestive issues during withdrawal. And some other conditions, the long list continues: chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia, generalized anxiety disorder, which can be misdiagnosed, even psychogenetic movement disorders, where anxiety manifests as physical symptoms due to the brain's altered chemistry from prolonged benzodiazepine use. When people talk about feeling the anxiety being physically manifested, my heart, my lungs, and neurological system were all checked multiple times in a period of 15 years. But the true culprit lay beneath the surface, and it was overshadowed by the calming presence of clonazepam. What I wish I had known back then is, by relying on benzodiazepines, I was putting a band-aid on ever-expanding wound. Instead of healing, I was delaying the inevitable. I was in my early 20s and I still felt pretty good. I would have random moments of panic attack. I would take the clonazepam, I would feel completely okay. As time went by and I reached my mid and late 20s, I started getting more chronic symptoms. I started feeling more sick without being sick, wired but tired, more anxiety, depression, severe depression, slurred speech, eye dryness, random joint pain. One day my left knee would hurt, the next day my back would hurt. All of these things because I never increased the dose of my benzodiazepine. And as I mentioned earlier, your body is very good at reaching homeostasis with whatever substance that you're taking. So because I stayed at that dose of around 1.2 milligrams, my body eventually started to have what is called interdose withdrawals. Interdose withdrawals is when you're on benzodiazepines and your body starts withdrawing because the dose has been the same for so long, or you're in an active taper. If you're on benzodiazepines and have been experiencing unexplained symptoms, I urge you to question everything. Advocate for yourself and don't allow another doctor's dismissal to silence your concerns. Let's pull back the curtain on all these hidden ailments and take the necessary steps towards holistic healing. By doing so, we can unlock the mysteries of our own body. Now, I mentioned earlier the tapering process. This is probably the most important part of the video. Let's say you discover that benzodiazepines are causing 90% of your issues. Now, your immediate reaction is going to go to coming off the drug, stopping it immediately. Major issues with this. One, You cannot, I repeat, you cannot stop any benzo class drug cold turkey. You can get into a coma, you can go into seizures, you can have heart attack, or you can die. This drug has to be reduced slowly. It needs to be. If you go to a doctor who is not skilled and knowledgeable in benzodiazepines, they'll try to taper you off way too quickly. Here's the problem with that. When you're on a benzodiazepine, your GABA receptors are damaged. They're not functioning properly. If you taper off of benzodiazepines far too quickly, you'll send your brain into shock. It will want to rebound as quickly as possible. In this process of rebounding, you can have things like hallucinations. Even though I'm doing it the right way, I experience mild hallucinations, anxiety attack, agoraphobia. I experience depersonalization, derealization. I have cognitive dissonance every now and then, and tiredness, fatigue, cramps, GI issues, you name it. One of the best resources out there, if you are somebody like me who wants to taper off of these benzos, is to look up Professor Heather Ashton and the Ashton Manual. She had this clinic about benzodiazepines, and she found a really good protocol of getting people off of these horrible drugs. So for me, I read the Ashton Manual. The Ashton Manual suggests to come off your benzo to do a 5 to 10% cut. I'm a nerdy motherfucker, so I created an Excel sheet and I track progress. Every 2 to 4 weeks, I come down about 5-10% of my dose, and I hold. So I've been doing that since September 16th. And right now we're in today's date is March 5th. I started at 1.2 milligrams, and right now I am at 0.29 milligrams. So I've been tapering for about 5 to 6 months. That's how slowly you want to do this if you want your brain to fully recover after you're done. So I'm at 0.29 milligrams, and I'll probably will jump off of this clonazepam at 0.1 or 0.065. The whole point is you want to get as low as possible. And another important thing to know is you won't be able to cut the 5-10% throughout the whole process of the taper. As your physical dose gets lower, your relative percentage is going to increase. So what I mean by that is you're going from 1 milligram to 0.9 is about 10%. But from 0.9 to 0.8, it's not 10%. When you get to, let's say, 0.3 milligrams to 0.2 milligrams, that's not 10%. It's a much bigger percentage. The numerical value might look the same, but the percentage is going up dramatically. If you are successful and you start getting to 0.2 milligrams, 0.10 milligrams, 0.10, and you go from, I'm just throwing out numbers here, but from 0.15 milligrams to 0.10, you're like, I went from 0.9 to 0.85 way in the beginning, and I don't know why this is hurting you. It's because your percentage is probably way higher. You're probably at 20% or something like that. The whole idea is you really want to listen to your body as much as possible. You know you're going too fast when your symptoms increase. At that point, you want to cut and hold. Never go back. Never go back. If you are feeling terrible and you want to go back to your dose, it's one of the worst things you can do for your taper. It will extend your taper process. It's called kindling. You want to hold that dose as long as you can. You want to listen to your body. You want to have as much support systems as you can around you. Again, if you quit these benzos, your body will retaliate against you. Each small decrease isn't just a step towards freedom. It's a painstakingly slow reclaiming of your autonomy, a chance to address the root cause. Make no mistake, tapering will absolutely be the hardest thing you've done in your life. It's been the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. And I've been through tremendous pain. But I've lost 15 years of my life to this drug, most of my adult life. And I'm not trying to lose anymore. So why is getting off benzos so essential? Getting off of benzodiazepines isn't just a checklist, it's an essential life decision. Remaining on these pills will perpetuate a cycle of dependence, and it leaves you fighting the same battles over and over again. Breaking free opens doors to exploring natural coping mechanisms, reassessing your life, and connecting with yourself and your family and your friends and all those fucking people you love. You can finally take charge of your own brain chemistry rather than being held hostage by a pill bottle, a liquid bottle. As I continue on this arduous journey of tapering off clonazepam, I'm launching a YouTube series. They will document this harrowing experience week by week. I'll share the raw truth about how I feel, the highs and the lows, and there will be a lot of lows, unfortunately. And the reality that this process it's a battlefield. It infuriates me to think about how careless it is for doctors to prescribe this drug without fully informing patients about the severe potential life-altering consequences. For some of you, you've probably been on this drug longer than me, but this medication has stolen 15 years of my life. I started around 19. I'm about 33 years old right now. 15 years engulfed in struggling and suffering that I can never reclaim. It's like a thief in the night that has robbed me of my health and well-being. I feel old before I should feel old. I feel miserable. This is the reality, and this is the whole point of my channel. But here's the silver lining. My whole point of doing this, because I'm not a specialist, I'm not a doctor. I'm just a guy who's gone through this long enough and am fed up and desperate to connect with like-minded people who are currently going through this or know somebody who's going through this. If I can reach just one person through my YouTube series, if I can make someone question their relationship with this poisonous substance, then perhaps I can turn my anger and my sarcasm, be it as you will, into something somewhat constructive. There is hope in sharing our stories and shedding light on these issues. That's how I learned about this taper. I was able to read somebody else's story because somebody was brave enough to put it out there. I am determined to raise awareness and help others find a way out of the darkness. We can be healthy again. We can be what we lost. We can reclaim it and that much more. But you cannot give up hope. You cannot quit. You cannot be a victim. We gotta rise above this and fight. There's only two ways to live and to die. And I want to live, even though a lot of times I feel the opposite. Thank you so much for your support. And remember, if you feel trapped, question it. If you feel numb, make some noise. And if you're struggling to reach out, you're not alone. And together, we can reclaim our stories. That'll be all for the video today. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Again, I'll be coming out with a Benzo series, hopefully about once a week, talking about in detail what I'm going through with that taper, how am I feeling, yada, yada, yada. Anyways, YouTube, peace. God damn. A lot of people out there are struggling with tapering, so stay tuned. Please comment, like, subscribe. Thank you for the 10K. Until next time. Peace. A lot of people out